Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. I call the meeting to order. My name is Richard Stewart. I'm the Mayor of Coquitlam. We have a meeting full of complicated and pomp and circumstance and some caring issues. But first of all, I want to introduce a visiting mayor. We have the mayor of Whoville is in the audience. I'd like him to step forward, please. Come right forward to the podium. No, it's the second guy. The guy that looks more mayoral. David, please introduce yourself. And
I feel pretty powerful here. Where are all your guys' bow ties? I'm the mayor of who? Well, I've just been elected. And being the mayor, there's lots of things from me that are expected. We live on a deathbed, as you might have already read. Dr. Seuss. Where is your bow tie? What's that little thing there? I tell you. Now, living on who, it's very, very hard, you see, you know, around this little speck of dust. It's very hard. We get blown to and fro. We get picked up by this huge elephant. It's hard. There are a lot of people here. I mean, look at all the council members.
well, we're also on television, Mr. Mayor. Now,
What's television?
The mayor of Whoville, we're actually, my wife and I had the honor of being able to attend a play at Centennial High School called Seussical the Musical, which is on right now. And David here is one of the leads. He plays the mayor of Whoville. Whoville is the town on the tiny dust speck from Horton Hears a Who, as you might remember. Boy, is he in the right council, says Councillor Reid.
Well, in my council, there's only me and my wife. I mean, so look at all these people. Think of all the tax money we could save if it was just him.
Exactly. I tell them that all the time. Now, I wonder if you could tell us, we're on a tight agenda, but I wonder if you can tell us when the play is playing. I guess it's playing tonight, because you have to rush off.
Not tonight.
Not tonight.
We are playing, well, we had 3 shows this week, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And we have 2 more that are not sold out, Thursday and Friday at 7:30 at Centennial School. But tickets are almost sold out. They are $13 for adults and $10 for students and seniors.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for coming out today, and I'm going to present, every mayor should have a gavel. It's been in my family for generations. I'd like you to have it now.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's a gavel. It allows you to call the meeting to order. Anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, David Bard, thank you very much. Now, we've had some silly mayors in the past here, I guess. But nothing that could rhyme as well as that, and I thank you very much, David. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Our first item is a namesake presentation by the Canadian Navy, who are here this evening to commemorate the HMCS Coquitlam. I'd like to invite them to come forward to the podium at this time.
Mayor Stewart, Council, ladies and gentlemen, we are members of the Naval Reserve Unit HMCS Discovery in Vancouver. I am Lieutenant Commander Marjorie Locke, a former commanding officer. With me is Lieutenant Steve Austin and Chief Petty Officer 2nd Class Bruce Docherty. Together, between us, we have 100 years of service in the Naval Reserve. You have many people in your community who serve untold number of hours volunteering for the arts, in hospices, and on sport teams and many numerous activities. We too have accumulated our years of service living, working, and raising our families and caring for our families and communities like yours. 2010 was the 100th anniversary of the Canadian Navy, and one of the initiatives of the Canadian Naval Centennial Project was to honor communities who have given their names to ships and submarines over the past 100 years. HMCS Coquitlam, a minesweeper, commissioned and launched in Nanaimo on the west coast, and where she served, is one of those ships. I found an obituary for a sailor from HMCS Coquitlam. Like many sailors who served for short periods during the war, he was a prairie sailor. These people came out of the Dust Bowl and the prairies and joined a world they knew nothing about, but they served with distinction and returned to their communities where they left their mark as unsung heroes. Mr. Alexander was born in Calgary. He served on HMCS Coquitlam from 1943 to 1946. On release from the service, he played a year with the Calgary Stampeders football team and then joined the Calgary Police and Fire Department until he retired in 1980s. He served his community. He played on baseball, fastball, and hockey leagues and coached ladies and community and girls community fastball, and also volunteered in a community association. Again, one of many unsung heroes in communities like Coquitlam. Mr. Mayor, we're pleased to present this token and memorial to the ship HMCS Coquitlam.
Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item 2 is our second presentation. I'd like to invite Ms. Harriet Chang from School District 43 to come forward and speak about Real Acts of Caring Week, for which we have a slide presentation.
Hi, my name is Thomas Black, and I'm in grade 6.
Hi, I'm Owen Wiley, and I'm grade 7.
Hi, I'm Trevor Gallant, and I'm in grade 6.
Hi, I'm Daniel, and I'm a grade 7.
Hi, I'm Megan Wilsfeld. I'm a grade 7, and we all go to Maple Creek.
Hi, my name is Mary Chad. I am in grade 6, and I go to Summit Middle School.
Students in the Coquitlam School District are celebrating Real Acts of Caring Week, RAC Week. Once again, during the week of February 13th to 20th, 2011 this year, we are asking the City Council to possibly pass a proclamation to recognize RAC Week, and for the residents in the Tri-Cities to celebrate RAC Week too.
What is Real Acts of Caring? Real Acts of Caring is about doing something kind and caring for another and not expecting anything back in return. A real act of caring is about making a positive difference for another.
A real act of caring is about helping somebody if they need it. A real act of caring is about making our world a better place.
This is the 6th year that the students in the Coquitlam School District have been involved in spreading caring and kindness in the Tri-Cities and British Columbia in February. Students have been lobbying with the local and provincial government since 2006.
We would like to share with you some of the real acts of caring that we have been doing to give you some ideas.
Trevor played with his brother without starting a fight.
Daniel cut the lawn without expecting any payment.
Owen played with his dog Murphy and gave him toys.
Megan helped pick garbage up in the community. Thomas chose to play with someone who looked like they didn't have any friends.
Megan cut her hair and donated it to kids who have lost their hair due to cancer, and 11 more people followed her and did the same.
Going out of our way to be caring and kind to an absolute stranger is sometimes described as strange or weird. We would like to challenge this belief and ask you to try doing a real act of caring. Maybe you'll agree with us that it doesn't have to be strange or weird. It needs to become a normal practice, and this would make our community an even better place. And actually, it's really quite fun.
Mayor Richard Stewart, we would like to give you some posters that have been going around the Tri-Cities.
Something I'd like to give you as well. We've actually just celebrated Chinese New Year, so we've got a lucky bamboo for you. You can go home and put it in water and be a symbol of some of the work that we're doing in our community to make things a little bit. There we go. There we go. There we go. Thank you very much. As was mentioned, this is, was it the 6th year that we've seen this before City Council? It's an absolutely wonderful initiative. We have a teacher in the audience, I believe, or two. Or do we, where? Is there a teacher? Nope.
Well, my wife is Harriet.
That's where. Where's Harriet?
She's sick today. So
Oh, that's too bad. Well, wish her well for us. I know she takes a lot of joy out of the work that the students do every year, and we thank you all, the students, for coming out tonight. Appreciate it. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item 3 is a presentation related to item 11 on the agenda this evening. It concerns business improvements and outdated rules. We have an introduction by Mr. John Dumont, who's our Deputy City Manager, followed by a presentation by Mr. Rick Ellegott, who's a consultant on this project.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. The Business Improvements and Outdated Rules report on the agenda tonight represents a significant effort by staff. And this work would not have been possible without the good work of our staff committee that was put together to champion this issue under the leadership of Rick Ellegott. And I would just like to take this opportunity to express my thanks to Rick and the staff committee that took on this initiative. This is really about creating a culture of continuous improvement and trying to ingrain that philosophy in our organization. I think we've made a really good first step towards that. And Rick is here tonight to give a presentation for the benefit of our audience in terms of the work that has been done to date. And with that, I'll turn things over to Rick.
Mr. Ellegott.
Thank you, John. Mayor Stewart, members of council, it's my pleasure to be back, albeit a month or two later than I promised you earlier. I am sensitive to that, Councillor, that I said we'd be back in December, but things turned out so successfully, I would say, and we collected more input than we anticipated. It took a little longer to put it together. So hopefully you'll see that tonight and be happy with that. I would like to recognize a couple of members of the committee who have accompanied me tonight. I think Tom Hawkins is here. Tom, if you just give a bit of an indication or stand up. And I think Brent Cormack is also here. Two of the members who worked through the whole process. I have about a 10-minute presentation, then I'd be happy to answer questions. And I'll run through it relatively quickly. It does reflect what's in the council report, and the council report is an effort to make things as crisp and understandable and straightforward as possible. If we couldn't communicate through a council report, we really wouldn't be cutting the red tape and coming forward with you. So with that, I'll jump right in. This work started off it started off from two basic directions. One is an ongoing piece of work from cyclical reviews, which council's dealt with several times. And it's been working its way through the hall, looking at the efficiency of various work units and divisions in the hall, and looking for ways to improve things. So that's one basic direction that it's come from. The second was in last June, July, there was a notice of motion put forward to create a committee or commission to eliminate red tape, and that's the second basic direction. Basically what happened in beginning of last summer was council said to staff, okay, what are you doing? Council said we're doing a lot of various reports, research on various areas. We're looking at business improvements. We're looking at how we can make things more effective. Council said, yes, but will it do some of the same things? We've got some materials from Winnipeg we'd like you to look at. We took all that away and formed a committee. The committee then is bringing forward a report tonight. Tonight's report is a direct response to that work last summer. The starting point for the work when the committee was formed, it included people from all municipal or city departments. The starting point was the past actions and things that have been happening for several years. And I don't mean back 10 or 15 years, I mean 2 or 3 years. And it was quite a long list. We pared it down to a half a dozen pages, and we've shared that with council under separate cover to try and keep the size of the council report down. That is available to anybody who's interested in looking at it. And it has a whole series of ongoing actions that staff are taking now. And it was also important to staff that the turn to look at how we can do better, how we can improve business, not be something that simply start now, that it be recognized that there's always been efforts, and it was a good starting point to talk that through as a committee. We also did look at Winnipeg and what was happening in Winnipeg. Since then, I have chatted with the only staff member that sat on the committee through the Winnipeg work. At the time when Winnipeg got started, they were seen as not being open for business, and it was seen as partly being due to city regulations. Since that time, they had their mayor's commission report. There was 33 odd recommendations plus a bunch of other actions related to it, and they've created from that what they consider a continuous improvement culture, and that's where they're constantly looking for better ways to do business as a way of doing business. For this particular work, we took some of those ideas, we've looked at the definitions. There's many things that we'll be able to learn from more as we move forward from this point. Where staff started last summer was to invite council to give input and all of staff. We put notices on all the municipal information boards called cork boards. We put up posters around the hall with the red scissors and the red tape and some of those catchy little things to see if we could get people's interest. The committee members went back and held meetings in their departments. They tried to encourage people to come forward. We collected one-on-one input. We went around and said, well, we haven't heard much from you or your department or your area. What's up? What's going on? And are there ways? And slowly we began to encourage people. And what started as a relatively unknown exercise quickly collected 150 or more, and we're continuing to hear responses, and items have come forward. All of them are not large items or small, but there's a whole range of activities and things that came forward. We took each of these issues and we referred them to the appropriate department. The department looked at each of these issues, not from a let's instantly solve the world's problems and every problem, but from the sense of what is the issue? They confirmed the problems, they clarified it. They then said, okay, is it something we can fix right away? Are there large costs to it? Is it interrelated to a whole series of departments? All those types of things. And they began to triage it a bit and assign ABC priorities, just what's more important, what's a little less important, and a sense of time frames. These things then came back to the committee, and the committee said, well, you can't just say no to a department. If they say, well, yeah, you're asking about our department, and we think everything's okay, that didn't really cut the mustard at the committee. The committee members sat and looked at this person from the department and said, have another look. That's not going to be the way that we're going to conduct business. Now, not a lot of that happened, but what I'm saying is there was an accountability at the staff committee, which I really thought was worth recognizing, and it was a really good first step to taking ownership on behalf of staff. It also very quickly brought to light something that I put up on a slide, and it's managing expectations. What we are bringing back tonight is a program of, you'll see it in the report, it's a first step. It's where we begin and where we build and where we go forward. We've collected so much interest, so much work, so many things that we could do that we can't do them all at once. So hence we prioritize them, and we manage them from the standpoint of we don't want to promise you more than we can deliver. And we don't want to promise the community more than we can deliver. So that doesn't mean we're not bringing forward a lot. We're bringing forward a very ambitious program, which I'll take you through. The other thing we did was start to say we're collecting things that weren't seen necessarily as priorities. The issue of eliminating red tape and eliminating outdated rules is a priority, but some of the actions that may need to be taken weren't necessarily things that were in your existing municipal or city priorities and strategic plans, nor in the budget processes. So when there's costs involved, some of those larger things need to be brought together with those other systems. The quick overview of the actions, where we found simple things, quick fix actions, we simply got on and fixed them. Minor in scope, easy to fix, why bother anyone with them? Let's just fix them. So they tended to be things like if we found a voicemail or messaging piece that wasn't working or communicating like we did at the animal shelter, we've improved convenience of lost and found information and voice messaging. Reduced wait times for deposit funds. I won't read them all, but you can see the list up there. And in the council report is a longer list of items. And that list continues to grow as I stand before you now. Now, in addition to the quick fix items, there's things that the committee felt could be done this year. We're combining a little bit immediate and short term, but it's things that effectively will be fixed this year, and they're things that tend to not or won't cost a lot of money, and you can see some of the list. Expand acceptance of credit cards. I know that's a big one for several councillors. Have we got to the end where we can say credit cards will be accepted for everything? No. Are we making progress? Yes. And finance commits that they'll continue to look for ways to take bigger items, but there is no easy fix for that one right off. Update the approach for mobile vendors, make legal survey plans available through QMAP, which would save somebody the cost of going down to land registry and that type of thing. Simplify rental contract requirements for city facilities. These are all things that are being looked at right now and will be done this year. Where they involve bylaws or council, they will come back to council for consideration. Where they're more, I wouldn't call them housekeeping, but where they're more doable, common sense, reasonable, we'll just get on and start and do them. Longer term actions, and there are some of these, and you'll see examples, and there's a fairly sizable list in the council report. They're things that will generally take more than a year to look at, partly because we can't do everything at once. Some of them also are so tied in bigger systems, and I'll get to one or two of those examples in a minute, that, sorry, Jay, sorry, I lost my train. The longer-term priorities are often tied to a lot of systems and a lot of departments, and they're not easy to simply change one little piece and the rest of it comes along. So they're more complex, they require more analysis, they sometimes require more funds, and they will be looked at over time. Things like reducing misdirected inquiries by identifying clear points of contact in the hall, eliminating the need for handwritten invoices. And some of these things you might say, well, do we still do that? Yes, we do in some areas. And what we'll be looking for is we find a problem, identify the issue, and then look not only at fixing that issue, but does it occur anywhere else in the municipal or city system, in our organization. It's bylaws is the best example that'll come up. Things like touching the zoning bylaw in many different areas, removing redundant zoning categories from the bylaw is something that's on the books now. And we'll talk about how we do that as we go. We also found there was a few actions which were larger than the committee and tended to be tied to the collective agreements, labor relations, union business. These haven't been lost, but they've been categorized or cataloged, and they're being handed to the HR, human resources, and the management team for the organization to consider them when we're next putting a negotiation package together as to whether we should be tackling some of these. There was also a series of what we'll call administrative actions that came up. They're more internal than external, and things dealing between departments and that. And they often dealt with things like culture, interdepartmental processes, attitudes and behaviors. Some of them are as simple as the formatting of emails or who signs to give people authority to have access to the various parts of the computer systems, but they all influence our ability to provide services to the community. And so not only do we have need to fix some of the external processes, we're looking at the internal processes at the same time. Items of broader magnitude. When we found things that were larger, and here's a few examples. The issue of bylaws. We have over 2,000 bylaws. There's a slide on it, but I'll jump ahead. And we are touching some of them as part of this. Expanding online availability for forms, application processes and booking appointments. The idea is that all of these things over time will be ways that we'll improve our service to the community. Updating and simplifying all the brochures, reducing processing times. It all sounds so reasonable, but these are ideas that were specifically identified in relation to specific processes around the City Hall. And staff brought them forward and said, I think we should start to look at these types of things. In the zoning bylaw one, over 2,000 bylaws, and what we propose to do is begin by eliminating the outdated ones and consolidating the existing bylaws. And then you start to say, well, while we're doing that, we might as well make the language more understandable and user-friendly. And that leads to then we need a process for maintaining them. If you're going to do it in the first place, we don't want to do it once and then 5 years from now we have to come back and do it again. We want an ongoing process. And then the bigger issue is we want to avoid creating unfriendly bylaws, not just in the language, but in the intent and purpose. And so what staff will be doing is preparing an overall program, and we'll bring it back and give you an idea of how we're going to do what I've just said. But that's a major undertaking. At the same time, there's all these specific actions and tasks. There's also the corporate culture, the attitudes and that, and the direction, and I put it up and I'll almost walk through it because I think it's very, very important, and that's we're moving towards a more user-friendly, approachable, responsive corporate culture or way of doing business. And the business improvement outdated rules work is the cornerstone in providing timely professional user services. Now, those are nice words, but what they really say is we need to begin to use that basic kind of direction when we're designing our services, when we're hiring staff, when we're coaching staff. So this starts to be the way that we are, and that's what the staff committee is suggesting tonight. When to do with corporate culture, there's also the issue of empowering staff to ask, why are we doing this, and is there a better way to do it? And staff's been very good about that recently. And the fact that this whole committee and giving staff the opportunity to respond is precisely doing that. You've said to staff, okay, go away, look at all these things, and ask those questions. And what we're coming back tonight and saying is we've found quite a lot of things we can do better at. Now we're ready to get on and do a lot of them. Consistent with the corporate culture is raising awareness, and here's some actions that we can take. And we'll suggest ultimately considering things like a customer care month and a Next Steps program. The Next Step program is based on the fact that from this work, the staff committee not only did what you asked, but I would venture to say they support it. They believe in it, and it's a better way. It feels like a more user-friendly way to do business. And if you're getting responses from the public that say, hey, thank you for the service, that feels better than getting somebody standing in front of you saying, I don't like the way that process works. So as we begin to change things, there's an instant feedback that is rewarding to staff. And I think staff's saying they buy into that whole idea and that approach. The Next Step program effectively says, let's finish up what we're doing now, follow up on the work of the staff committee. Let's listen to our clients and collect input from the residents and businesses and developers. And we would suggest the first way to do this would be by using some of the systems that we've got now. We annually go out and ask the public through an Ipsos Reid survey. We perhaps could add some things on our service and see where we can do better. The UDI, we have meetings, we have town hall meetings. All of these are vehicles that we could use. There's also the idea of having special meetings or inviting some of the developers and businesses to give input in that. So we very much feel now we've started to look at ourselves. It's a complementary part to invite the community to also comment on how are we doing? Are we meeting your needs? And finally, the third piece of the Next Steps program is to develop a more user-friendly, approachable corporate culture. And just to close, so I don't talk too long here, Council has empowered staff, and I think this is really important, trusted and encouraged staff to create more user-friendly and approachable services and all those good things. The real key is staff has responded. And I'm very comfortable standing here tonight and saying I really believe that. And they've responded by being supportive, by being less defensive than you would think, less possessive, and more receptive. And together what that means is it's a very significant and successful first step for this whole program. And we would suggest that we continue that over time because we believe it will meet all of these objectives of eliminating red tape, making business improvements, and most of all, I think, avoid creating more red tape and outdated rules and things like that in the future. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I would stop and be happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Reamer.
Thank you. Since I first proposed that motion last June or July to cut red tape in the city, I have suggested to you and to my colleagues on council that we really need to take this out to citizens, businesses, and investors in the city. And I understand that you're wanting to use the systems we have in place now to do that. And I guess I'm wondering what your thoughts are and what the thoughts of staff are on perhaps striking a temporary committee that maybe meets only 3 times to take. I have to thank staff very much. This is an incredibly complex report. I have to thank staff for the incredibly hard work that they've put into this. And my feeling is that it's now time to take all of your hard work and all of your suggestions out to citizens, businesses, and investors for feedback. And so I'm wondering what your thoughts are on doing that.
Through the chair, Councillor, my feeling is it's a very good idea, and there's no question that we should be asking the community, inviting them to help us shape the services. I think that the committee could probably use a little bit more time to catch up with where we're at now before we invite the world in. It's been a very short period of time, striking the committee in August, getting working in September, and collecting stuff for 3 months and then packaging it and bringing it forward, using a staff group of people who have full-time jobs. There hasn't quite been time to retool the system, which will come over time, free up some time from people in departments, and then get it moving. So I guess we're thinking more cautiously and almost baby steps. I appreciate what you're saying, and I don't disagree. There is a need to take that step, whether we're not sure we're quite ready for it as a staff group, but so I'm saying maybe one step at a time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to remind Council, there's an item on the agenda, and I'm going to propose that we move that item 11, to be the next item. If there are no detractors to that, I'm not moving to it now. If there are questions of the presenter, we'll permit that, but you may want to save your questions for the debate on the item 11. Councillor Lynch.
Thank you, and I will take the opportunity that you're here. I definitely agree that we need to work on having a more user-friendly corporate culture, and bylaws is one part of that. I was a little surprised to see that the customer service management software utility was kind of at the bottom of the long-term objectives. I'm assuming that's just the software that we're talking about as long-term, not because I know we had somebody on staff who actually did a master's program sponsored through the city on customer service and was working diligently on bringing forward a customer service plan. And what I've heard frequently is that when people want to start a business, people who are inexperienced in business come to the city and want to start a business and go through all the processes, that we don't have anything like even a short fact sheet. If this is what you have to do, they'll come in, they'll do one thing. When they're told to come back with something else, they come back and then they're informed there's another process or another step they need to go through. So I'm wondering, when you've been going through, and red tape's one thing to cut, and all these items I see here, most of them are very familiar. They're items that have been raised by previous councillors. So I guess my point is, are we working towards having some type of a fact sheet or a process that's going to be very user-friendly for people who are inexperienced in business in order to attract new businesses to the city?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. To be honest, I don't know all the details of every piece of what work we're doing. Could you help me? Is that on the short-term list or the long-term list?
Actually, what I was referring to is a how-to kind of fact sheet, and I don't see it on the list at all, which is why I raised it, because I've been asked before, and I thought perhaps it's maybe buried in some other terminology.
I would say let's take it away and we'll have a quick look and put it on the list. The list is open for reworking and reprioritizing, or if that's the right word, reprioritizing constantly. If a need is identified, it should be dealt with, and if that's a high one, then it should be dealt with before other ones. So
I think it's one, when we're talking about having a friendly corporate culture, I think that to a lot of people coming in dealing with the city in business or another area that they're inexperienced is, that we need to be able to provide support, customer service.
We would see not only undertaking to change some of the processes in that, but to retool or re-equip our counter staff a little bit to recognize when a process perhaps isn't working well, or when you're hearing bad feedback, why are you getting that? And empower them a little more to take that feedback, put it in, and we'll work on it like now. And so all I can say on the direct responses, we'll put it on the list and we'll get on with it as staff right now.
Okay, and my final comment was when I saw Business Care Month, I'm thinking, well, it should be all year. It shouldn't just be a month, even though we may focus on one that we don't want to have that type of mindset. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sikora.
Thank you very much. Good work. Certainly, a lot of things need streamlining. You know, we're about many years behind in streamlining. The one thing that I would like to say, that if you looked at this city as a business, because it is really a huge business, it's a multi-million-dollar business, and we ran it like a business, we would be much further off than what we are today. You know, too many of our bylaws are passed, they're non-enforceable, never will be enforced, you name it, but they're there because it looks good in the public's eye. The public likes it. but there's no way you can enforce it. So why have them on a books? That's the thing. So I'd like to see this totally streamlined, run it like a business, and the whole city and the taxpayers would gain by it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I too will comment on your presentation, particularly. I mean, I think the reduction of red tape needs to be part of the corporate culture, and we described that. Several council members have mentioned that, because we really do have some great people here at City Hall, here at the city, a great staff, and I think that we have to empower that staff to find solutions to issues. I just had a run-in with a large provincial bureaucracy. I'll name it. It was ICBC, and it took a year. They all admitted for a whole year that they knew they were wrong. And after a year, they finally reversed their decision completely. But it was a year of trying to find a staff person who was capable of reversing the decision rather than just apologizing for the corporation. I want our staff to be empowered to find those outdated rules, to find those situations where our customer isn't being as well served as he or she could, and to make the changes necessary to fix the situation. And I certainly appreciate the work that you've started, and I know the work that all of staff have started. We've got a long way to go. Thank you very much for your presentation. Seeing none others, I'm going to ask our clerk to call item number 11.
Thank you, Your Worship. If you just give me a second to skip forward. Thank you. Item 11 is a report of the Staff Committee on Business Improvements and Outdated Rules. The recommendation is that Council authorize staff to begin implementing the priorities for action outlined in the report, with the understanding that actions requiring changes to bylaws and other policies adopted by Council will be brought back to Council. Council improve in principle the next steps program outlined in attachment D, and that staff be requested to provide Council with a progress report on an annual basis.
Moved by Councillor Lynch, second by Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Asmundson.
Thank you very much. Good report, good start, good direction on it. This is streamlining, something that I think we've been working out. I think our new city manager, when he came in here, he brought with him the attitude when he first came here about the outdated rules, looking at the rules, making sure that they're effective. And I think he had the one with the driveway when he first came in here about a policy and saying, well, the policy doesn't fit this and we're going to fix it the proper way and move on, not always sticking to the exact policy, starting to think outside the box a bit. And the notice of motion, I think, formalized a direction on outdated rules. Red tape, I think, is sometimes maybe a buzzword that goes out there, but I think we have to be also looking about streamlining, because a lot of times rules are there for the protection of the public, and I think people can look at that, but they want to have the rules there, but they're in an efficient and streamlined fashion that works for everybody. I think out of this report, after I read it, there's a few key things. I think staff has done a good job. There is no direct funding for staff. Staff is doing all this type of stuff right now off the side of their desk. They've come up with over 150 items, and they prioritize them to 3 areas. Some they've done on. So I give staff thank you for stepping up to the plate and really starting to take hold of cultural change. And that's something I think you want to have permanently in here. And I think that the second part comes to this council is, if we're serious about this, we then have to step up and give funding to make the changes happen that we want to happen. There's a lot of complex things here. There's a lot of things that need funding and resources to be done to effectively bring about better efficiencies and change for the public. So that's on us. And Councillor Zakora was right, I think, in his point, very right, that we as council create a lot of bylaws, and we have to give good thought to these bylaws before we pass them. Because when you talk about 2,000 bylaws, well, everybody says staff. No, it's the council that's responsible for them, right? Correct, Mr. Sikora? So that's on us, I would say. And we have to put this, and I'd like to ask staff to come back with some of the more of the longer term priorities, set some of the ones that you see are the higher priorities, and start working on some budget estimates for council to get that work done. And so we can include it in our budget and move forward in this. And I think that's the next big step. The other part about inviting other people in and stuff, that once again, we have to look at the cost of that, because, we've had federal, provincial governments set up committees to study red tape or this or that, and the committees have wound up costing more to do the report than what the efficiency was. So you got to be careful on that part. But I think right now the steps the staff have taken are very positive, and I think we want to continue in that direction. And I thank staff for stepping up to the plate in such a positive manner to help facilitate a more streamlined and efficient city and customer service. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reamer.
Thank you. First of all, I'm wondering if we can vote on these recommendations seriatim. So there's that, and I want to speak to the motion.
Fine with me.
Oh, okay. I want to delve again into Attachment D, Part 2. The second part asking our community how we are doing and inviting input from the city's clients. It's been suggested that we do this through our annual Ipsos Reid survey, and it's also suggested that we do this through our town hall meetings and through our UDI monthly forum. I think that when you're a citizen receiving a telephone call from Ipsos Reid, I don't think you're really going to understand the context about how all of these outdated rules and cutting the red tape came along and what work's been done, and I think it would be very difficult for citizens to provide that feedback. I'm not saying don't do that. I just think that we need to do something more. I do think that we need to consider having a committee in the future, just a temporary committee that's not going to cost the money that it cost in the city of Winnipeg. I do note that our colleagues in the city of Surrey, the mayor has just struck a committee to examine red tape in the city of Surrey. And I think as well that there'd be interest from our business partners, probably the Chamber of Commerce, who I'm sure would be happy to work together with us on a committee to look at red tape and to look at all these fabulous suggestions that are contained within the staff report. So I would like to move that we add that as a potential possibility for the future under Part 2 of Attachment D. And should that fail or should that go, I would also like to see us referring this to our Economic Investment Advisory Committee because there's a group of experts sitting around that table, I think, whose advice we would very much value with respect to this. And that may be a low-cost way of getting some further input, but the real input should be a committee made up of citizens, investors, and businesses to obtain this feedback that we need. So I so move that we add that to the list here for the future when staff is ready. Temporary committee.
Okay. Is there a seconder for the motion?
Could we get clarity on that?
Well, I was going to ask for clarity. I thought perhaps someone else understood it better than I did. Specifically, what is your motion for a temporary committee other than the staff committee?
A temporary committee at the call of staff when staff is ready should be set up, made up of citizens, businesses, and investors to examine the recommendations and information that the staff committee has come up with.
Thank you. Okay, is there a seconder for that motion? I think there's still some. We may find that comes up as the debate goes further, and that questions get answered about the intent of that motion. But I'll allow Councillor Reamer to finish if she's. Are you done?
I'm done. Thank you.
No? Okay, Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll respond to a couple of Councillor Reamer's points, even though I didn't second them to speak to them. I think that as we get our progress reports and as we see our level of satisfaction and our staff and the apparent citizen level of satisfaction with the work that we've done in trying to reduce red tape, contradictory bylaws, so on and so forth, that would be the time to consider whether to implement an additional committee. And as far as referral to the Economic Development Advisory Committee, I think that committee is a visionary committee. I don't think it has a role in telling us how to make the city work, to tell us how the city should work and what the city should be striving to accomplish, but I don't think we want them spending their time trying to deal with the nuts and bolts in the engine room. I did, however, wish to amend recommendation 3. I think that anything that is this important to council, anything that's important enough to council to warrant us asking for reports back, warrants reports more frequently than annual. And I would say semi-annual. I would expect the first report back in September of this year and semi-annually thereafter. And so I would ask to amend recommendation 3 to reports on a semi-annual basis.
Moved by Councillor Nicholson, second by Councillor Reid. Edit number 3 to be semi-annual.
Thank you.
On the amendment, are there any discussion on the amendment? I actually had that written down myself. Anybody else? No? On the amendment, call the question. All in favor? Opposed? The amendment carries unanimously. The motion as amended. Back to Councillor Nicholson. Anything further? Councillor Reid.
Thank you.
Oh, Councillor Reid.
Thank you. There's been considerable time spent in this, not just by the members of the committee, but all members of the staff of the whole darn city. I'm on an austerity program this year. I can only afford so much staff time. I would like to know what an approximate cost on this whole thing has been. I think it's premature at this time to bringing in any outside committees. First of all, when you're going in and looking at programs and systems and customer service, you really have to be on the inside knowing the systems that we have in place now, which ones need to be changed, which ones don't. Because it's not just as simple as running a little grocery store. In this city hall, even as a councillor, you soon learn that this department's attached to that department, that's attached to that department. And it's much more complex than running an ordinary business, I would say. I believe in what Councillor Reamer has to say, but I think we're just a bit premature. I think we need to move down the path a little more before we even get there. So I'm happy with the report in September. I think that would be prudent and move forward, but I do want to find out what this is costing me, because that's a biggie. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sikora.
No, he's going to reply to Councillor Reid.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, please.
And these costs are not just yours, but including the staff time that we're taking away from their jobs as well?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, we'll work out a full number for you that includes any salary or time. Understanding I worked on more than just this project, so it's not all my time.
Understood.
What we could do is estimate, given the amount of time other departments put in and the staff, but they're not like budget increase. They're all included in the budget now, as you're fully aware. We just stole some time from other projects and used it on this project, or borrowed some time, if you like.
Well, thank you, because you're the first project that we've ever had that didn't come forward with a budget attached to it, even though that all the staff was being paid for already. But thank you.
It basically has, yes.
Perfect.
So we'll include that. If it would meet your need, we'll include that in the September report. Would that be, or would you like it sooner?
No, September's good.
Okay.
You'll owe me more money by then.
Thank you. Councillor Spark.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that, you know what, every 3 or 4 months or even every 6 months we get a progress report on these bylaws. I think it's sufficient. It looks like there's a lot of work being done in the last few months. A lot of bylaws have been looked at and outdated, which is great. I think that, and I understand what Councillor Raymer is saying, I mean, probably at a later date all this can come about, but to use a town hall meeting for bylaws, can you imagine anybody that's sitting in the audience would they care about our bylaws as far as they're concerned on a town hall meeting? They want to talk about the services in our community, the taxes in our community, the likes and dislikes of what is happening in our community. That's what they're interested in. For a layperson to talk about a certain bylaw, there are certain bylaws that we've passed in the last 4 or 5 years that I know that not enforceable, but that's something you can look at. And I know that there's a bylaw in the books, matter of fact, to where if you go to the liquor store and buy a bottle and you don't go straight home, you go to a grocery store to buy some mixer, the policeman can confiscate your bottle. Now that's about 100 and some odd years old, but it's on the books. So I mean, how silly is that? But there's many of those kind of bottles that are available that are on our books that don't make much sense. So let's work together, and I think that committee is doing a good job. We're on the right track, and we're moving in the right direction, and I like it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to concur with the. I think what happens is we've got some people within City Hall that understand a great many of the bylaws. We have, quite frankly, not that many residents that understand a great many of the bylaws, because that's the nature of it. Our lives are complex, and our residents don't focus on everything that City Hall does, I hope, because they wouldn't really have lives. I think that what we need to do is take input from residents and businesses as to bylaws that they find in their experience have not been helpful, because I hear those anecdotes all the time. I want to make sure that at some point very soon, we put in place a mechanism that allows for businesses and for residents, for the public to give input as to identify the issues that they have as quickly as possible, so that the committee can then examine that and see whether it's possible that another bylaw does it better or another structure might do it better. We hear all the time from residents that of the kinds of barriers that they have discovered, the barriers that they've run into as they went to the counter and asked for a permit and found that they had to fill out the same information 3 times or something like that. It's the cost. There was a question raised as the cost that we've incurred identifying this redundancy. Well, we have to remember that bylaws have costs, that processes have costs to residents and to businesses, and that delays, that time is one of the most expensive things. And so finding those delays and cutting them out, finding the barriers that the public runs into and removing them if they're unnecessary, that's an important process, and allowing the public a way of providing that information to the staff team would be, I think, would move us forward greatly. Seeing no other comments, we're going to, Councillor Reamer has asked for division on this, so we're going to, I'll do it by division anyway. We've already ruled that way. On item number 1, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. On item number 2, recommendation number 2, the Next Steps Program, Attachment D, all in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. And on item 3, as amended, which is now a semi-annual basis for the reporting back to council, all in favor? Opposed? And that's carried unanimously as well. Thank you very much to staff for all the work that they've done so far, but there's lots of work ahead of us. Thank you.
Item 4 concerns the minutes of the regular council meeting held Monday, January 17th. Recommendations to approve those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Lynch, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Item 5 is the minutes of the public hearing held Monday, January 24th. Recommendation to approve those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, second by Councillor Lynch. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Oops, apparently not. Councillor Nicholson.
So long since we've had a meeting in here that I forgot to push the button, and I'm trying to scroll to the note that I made earlier, and I am going to get the hang of this someday soon. Mr. Chalice spoke about the application in Coquitlam. and said he was looking for information relative to the Coquitlam neighborhood plan, Lower Lougheed neighborhood plan on the city's website and hadn't been able to locate it. He was told that every effort would be made to have the information provided to him and to include it on the city's website. And I wondered if that had happened as yet or what state of progress we're in on that request.
And I assume you're on item number 3.
On page 4 of the public hearing.
Okay. Okay, second paragraph on page 4, Mr. Chairman.
Sports and Culture Standing Committee meeting held Monday, January 24th. Recommendations to receive the minutes.
Moved by Councillor McDonnell, second by Councillor Lynch. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item of business being put forward from that committee concerns the Miller Elementary School and the addition of park washrooms. The two-part recommendations that Council approve the constructions of these washrooms for a cost of $159,000 outlined in the staff report, and that Council authorize staff to negotiate and enter into agreement with the school district with regard to their construction and operation.
Moved by Councillor McDonnell, second by Councillor Lynch. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 8 is the minutes of the Land Use and Economic Development Standing Committee meeting of Monday, January 24th. Recommendation to receive the minutes.
Moved by Councillor Lynch, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favour? Opposed? Carried.
First item arising out of that committee's work it concerns a preliminary report and application for zoning amendment bylaw 4194 and a 5% park dedication provision for 1392 Coast Meridian Road. The four-part recommendation is to give first reading to zoning amendment bylaw 4194, that this bylaw be referred to public hearing, that council require the owner of the proposed subdivision to provide 5% land to meet the dedication requirements of the LGA, and that council authorize staff to acquire ownership of the balance of the neighborhood park that is over and above this required amount.
Second. Moved by Councillor Aspenson, second by Councillor Reamer. Discussion. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 8.5 concerns zoning amendment bylaw and 5% park dedication requirements for a proposed subdivision at 1294 Coast Meridian. This is bylaw 4195. The committee's recommendations that council give first reading to zoning amendment bylaw 4195, that this bylaw be referred to public hearing, and that the owner of the proposed application provide 5% cash in lieu to meet the provisions of the LGA.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, second by Councillor Lynch. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 8.6 is final readings of an OCP amendment bylaws, bylaw 4113, and rezoning amendment bylaw 4114. And it's a development permit authorization report for a 19-unit townhouse development at 1310 Coast Meridian Road. Three-part recommendation is to give fourth and final reading to OCP amendment bylaw 4113, fourth and final reading to zoning amendment bylaw 4114, and that the development permit be authorized for execution.
Move recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, second by Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Aspenson.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to be supporting this application. This application is to change the previously passed zoning by council. This property came before council about a year and a half or so ago, give or take, and was passed through staff and through council as a 10-lot single-family subdivision. People in the area surrounding that did their homework, purchased their houses, knowing that single-family housing had been approved close to them. I've spoken with these residents up there, and they feel quite betrayed, let down, that now that they're going to be potentially living beside a townhousing, and they feel that they had come to the city, done their homework, found that the zoning had been previously approved as single-family home, not multifamily homes, and are quite upset that this is happening in their neighborhood. One of the reasons for this was suggested that people didn't want the houses' backyards facing Coast Meridian. Well, and that's why they're suggesting going to a townhouse unit. Well, you can turn the housing on that lot, 10-lot single-family housing, to face Coast Meridian. The other issue you have to realize is that on Coast Meridian, there is a sensitive area, or SPIA area as it's called, that's protected. Those houses or townhouses facing Coast Meridian, you can't have access to cross or enter to them because it is a protected, fenced-off area. Similarly, along David Avenue, you have covenanted area, SPIA area, where you can't gain access through to the properties. So you are having either the fronts of them facing, either ones that can't have access up a walkway or driveway, you have to access them off the back lane. So we've also then recently and a while have passed other developments on Coastal Meridian with the rear lots facing Coastal Meridian. So I don't know why you pass one and don't have a problem with it, and then you come down here and you say you have a problem with it. In some ways, I think it's better to probably have the back lots facing the SPIA, because you can do more tree planting and blend it in with the SPIA sensitive area with the back lots rather than the front lots. This comes down to also an increase in density for this person of almost 100%. You're going from 10 lots to 19 lots, and that's quite a change. There's also been a concern on the residents of Burke Mountain about the constant wanting of taking single-family housing that's been proposed and changing over to multifamily housing, and there's a concern about that. The other concern is, who are we representing? The people up there don't feel that council is representing their interests. They feel that council is listening to the developers is, and they're the ones that are going to have to live there and live with the housing that's there for the long term. So I think it's wrong for council to approve this to a 19-unit townhouse. I think it sets a bad precedent. I think if you are concerned about the backyards facing Coastal Meridian, and like I said, we allowed other developments to face, but if you are, you can turn the development of those single-family houses to face Coastal Meridian. You will have green space all along Coastal Meridian, all along David Avenue due to the covenant area. So for those reasons, I will not be supporting this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sikora.
Thank you very much, Mayor. This piece of property is really troublesome to me. The fact is that, when Mr. Sheridan had this property, he fought for 2 years to try and get 10 lots out of it, Mayor. He fought for 2 years to get 10 lots. He was having a bad time to get 10 lots. He finally got 10 lots. There was not going to be no access for him to the main road. So I called that locking property, which is illegal to have any property in the city be locked in. He had to somehow get a neighbor to agree that eventually there's going to be a driveway through his property to the road, which is, again, very, very illegal what was happening at that time, because you cannot lock any property in the city of Coquitlam, or any city for matter of fact. So now all of a sudden, 2 years later, this developer is able to get 19 units instead of 10 units. He's also able to get the access to Coastal Meridian Road and to David, or Coastal Meridian, and previous developer or person couldn't get it. So, to me, I'm saying what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Let's have a level playing field. Not have a whole bunch of rules. They'll fit this gentleman or this developer, but this developer will go a higher level. I mean, to me, I think I have to be fair in this city. Doesn't matter who that person is that's developing or who the owner of the property is. To me, that should not be the case. And here, I don't know what it is, but 19 units from 10 units, Mayor, is really troubling me a lot. So I will not be supporting it either.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. Before I speak, I'd like to clarify something with Mr. McIntyre. Did we not receive, being that the previous owner of this property is of such concern to these two councillors, did we not receive a letter from him approving the townhouses on it, I believe?
Mr. McIntyre.
Through the chair, certainly Mr. Sheridan was aware of this application, and I'm not sure what arrangements they had made, but he was aware that they were going to go forward with the townhouse
I believe
proposal.
I have a letter somewhere which I can probably produce. Thank you, Mr. McIntyre. This corner is a pretty integral part of the Burke Mountain development. This is where David bumps into Coast Meridian, where we have a big development, commercial development, and this corner I think is pretty significant. So to me, from a more of a massing point of view, it's nice to have something tall and substantive. I like the 19 townhouses. We could have had 10 single-family houses with 10 basement suites, because so far up there I'm not seeing many single-family homes that are not just single-family homes. One only has to go up there and talk to the developers to see what's going on, and some of the realtors, that people are looking for suites when they're paying $800,000 and $900,000 for homes up there. I like this development on this corner. I think the corner is going to work, and we want Burke Mountain to be special, and it is special. And I want it to have, when Westwood came in with their development process for this commercial development, we said, look, we want something nice, we want something with the wow factor, we want something really good, and this corner deserves it, and I fully support this. And I'm done.
Thank you. I similarly support this. I remember, though, when Mr. Sheridan was before the previous council, probably 5 years ago, and he was struggling at the time. It's true, his property is wrapped almost completely in SPIA, in sensitive riparian area. It's riparian down Coast Meridian, riparian across David, and riparian up the western side of his property. 3 sides of his property have riparian area. So it's not illegal for 3 sides of your property to be protected, because obviously in that case there's several levels of government that are protecting those 3 sides of your property. It's illegal to not allow access to the 4th side if that happens, so that you don't landlock that piece of property, and that's in fact what has been done here. There are requirements now that the adjacent property owner, the property owner just north, allow access through that property in order to gain access to this, whether it's single-family homes, whether it's a single home, or 19 townhouses or an apartment building. At the time, there was concern, for example, it's gone from 10 to 19. Well, when I first got elected as a councillor, it was 1. It was 1. He was going to be allowed to build 1 house, and he was going to have to ask variances for that. We had some work to do in order to allow it, a proper neighborhood to be built there, and it produced a street with 2 rows of single-family homes that was going from 1 till 10, and I supported that. Going from 10 to 19 is simply a different land use. It's going from single-family homes, which is a lower density by its nature, although, as Councillor Reid points out, with a basement suite, it actually could effectively be 20 units, to 20 units, or to, in this case, 19 townhouse units. They're smaller, they're meant to be more affordable, and this is also, as Councillor Reid points out, this is at the corner of our 2 arterials. Our big arterial route east-west on this mountain is David, and our big north-south arterial is Coast Meridian. And here we are at the corner of those 2 arterials. We've got a commercial property, we've got high-density residential properties, and we had 1 remaining property that was a single-family site. And I think it's entirely appropriate that we go with higher densities at those high-traffic corners, because that's typically what communities do. So I'm not feeling that this one is out of place. If you ask me, starting from a fresh slate, what would you put here? I'd contemplate an apartment building or a townhouse project or some kind of multifamily project that would be in keeping with the kind of character that we're trying to create in a very high traffic corner, the kind of face of Coquitlam as we approach Burke Mountain. So I'm comfortable with the direction that this is going. I think we're taking the appropriate steps related to traffic management and the appropriate steps in order to protect those sensitive lands to the west, south, and east of this property. And so I'm going to be supportive of it. Councillor Reamer.
Thank you. I also am in favor of this. I agree with the statements made by Councillor Reid and Mayor Stewart. If we're going to have higher density, the corner of David and Coast Meridian, in my mind, is a place to do it. I live up on the Westwood Plateau, and I look at where the majority of density is up there, and it's on your major street corners. I'm really happy about the proposed permanent access. I was a little hesitant when I found out that it could be in the future right in, right out. But to begin with, there will also be a left turn off of Coast Meridian into there. And I hope that that can stay for as long as possible, because the traffic generation of going from the 10 units to the 19 was a concern for me, but I believe that has now been addressed, and so I fully support this. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I won't repeat all the things that have been said by you, by Councillor Reid, by Councillor Reamer. The one further point that I would make is that lot coverage is substantially reduced by going to this townhouse model. The ability of the ground to absorb the water, all those things, the green space for people to live within, and for people in the neighborhood to observe and enjoy is substantially increased, and I'll be supporting this.
Well, I thank all of Council, and I think their heartfelt feelings on this one. Seeing no other speakers, the question is approval of the staff recommendation. All in favour? Opposed? Councillor McDonnell, Asmundson are opposed, and Councillor Sikora is opposed. The motion carries.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item 9 is the minutes of the Engineering, Utilities and Environment Standing Committee meeting of Monday, January 24th. Recommendations to receive those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Lynch, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favour? Opposed? Carried.
Item 9.3 concerns the energy efficient street lighting project. The recommendation is Council endorse the use of adaptive street lighting technology on the city's inventory of Davitt-style street lights as presented in the report of the General Manager of Engineering and Public Works.
Moved by Councillor Lynch, second by Councillor Nicholson. Councillor McDonnell.
Thank you. When I looked at the report on this, at the trial run, the majority of people supported the energy efficient lighting, but there was still a significant amount of people that were unsure about it. And I asked at the last committee meeting if we'd checked with the RCMP, because over the course of the night, with the lighting diminishing certain hours, if the police thought that there was going to be any kind of a safety aspect, and I still don't see a report in here. Oh, I didn't get this in my report. Oh, it wasn't in our report, it was in our mailboxes. Okay.
No, it was a secret.
It was a secret. Okay. Well,
RCMP takes time to respond.
So you don't have the secret one either?
I'm going to ask whether it might be appropriate. Is there a time sensitivity to this, or ought we to...
This can be deferred, Your Worship.
I'd like Council to make sure they're comfortable with all aspects of the report that have come before us. So if a couple of Council members I've heard so far haven't seen that one version of it, or that one bit of information that was provided in the mailboxes, so I'm going to entertain a motion to defer till 2 weeks from now.
Which I will make that motion.
Move deferral for 2 weeks. Councillor McDonnell, second by Councillor Reid. The question of deferral. There's a speakers list here, but I'm going to... Okay, if everyone's comfortable. All in favor of deferral? Opposed? The motion to defer is carried. We'll see this again in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Item 10 concerns the minutes of the Special Strategic Priorities Administration Protective Services meeting of Monday, January 24th. Recommendations to receive those minutes.
The controversial decision of receiving the minutes. Councillor Lynch, seconded by Councillor Nicholson. All in favour? Opposed? Carried.
Item of business arising out of that committee's meeting concerns the Maillardville Commercial and Cultural Revitalization Task Force and their terms of reference. The recommendation from the standing committee is that Council amend the terms of reference of the task force as follows. That Council advise Council on commercial and cultural revitalization efforts for Maillardville, including the development of a 20-year strategic plan and a realistic 5-year near-term implementation plan. focus on the existing common vision for Maillardville, which is consistent with the existing land use policies, and finally represent the commercial, business, and residential culture and heritage interests in an integrated fashion for the betterment of Maillardville.
Moved by Councillor Nicholson, seconded by Councillor Reamer. Any discussion? Seeing none, we've had lots of discussion on this. All in favour? Opposed? That carries unanimously. Merci beaucoup.
Item 11 has already been addressed, so I will move on to item 12. Item 12 concerns the Murray-Clarke connector and the United Boulevard. This is for the North Fraser Perimeter Road Project Development Plan. The three-part recommendations that Council advised the City of Port Moody that Coquitlam supports the connector project, noting its importance as a future network element for the northeast sector, and also supports TransLink proceeding with business case analysis to determine its priority placement for consideration in future supplemental plans. Endorse TransLink's United Boulevard Extension Project, the NFPR development plan scheduled for first quarter of 2011, and that letters be sent to Province and TransLink urging them to collaboratively resolve source funding issues so that senior government funding is leveraged, and the commencement of the Evergreen Line United Boulevard Extension Project, as well as other high priority initiatives, occur as soon as possible.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, second by Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to I'll place myself in your hands. Either amend point 1 of the recommendation or give direction to staff. But I would like to ask TransLink to make certain that TransLink considers in its business case analysis of the Murray-Clarke connector the fact that the absence of the MCC effectively reduces the benefits of many other significant investments by TransLink and municipalities throughout the Northeast. If we don't build the Murray-Clarke connector, if TransLink doesn't fund the Murray-Clarke connector, then a lot of money that's being spent on connecting roads and other plans doesn't give us its full utility.
And that is probably the case with any link in a system of a chain, such as the Bailey Bridge along the North Fraser Perimeter Road, for example.
Exactly.
The failure to build that means that there's no point widening.
There wasn't any point in building United Boulevard or perhaps the King Edward Overpass. However, I'd like to be sure that TransLink does take that into account in their business case analysis.
Okay, I see Mr. Gilbert.
Councillor Nicholson raised the question of whether it should be an amendment or direction to staff. Given that letters are being sent to TransLink, perhaps it'd be better received as direction given the breadth of what was said, if Council agrees with that ultimately being direction of Council.
Appreciate your advice, Mr. Gilbert.
I see that being included, and I suspect there's going to be some more comments that will likely find their way in some form or other into a letter to TransLink. Did Mr. McIntyre or Mr. Zuzak have anything on this one?
Just a very brief comment at the staff level. Certainly, we feel the Murray-Clarke connector is needed. From our perspective at the staff level, we think it's critical also to pursue the United Boulevard extension as it involves goods movement. It has a certain strategic profile, economic strategic profile for the region, and the fact is there is external funds that have been committed for United Boulevard, and so we see an opportunity to ensure that we leverage those funds. Thank you.
Fair comment. Anything else, Councillor Nicholson?
Other than that, I completely support the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Reid.
Well, critical is the operative word here. Right now, we're adding on to the Port Mann Bridge. We've got everything coming into Coquitlam, and sort of like Port Moody, they've got no way of moving everybody out. We need the United Boulevard. I mean, definitely New Westminster does. And the Murray-Clarke connector, I mean, these don't seem like, when you're going for a huge regional transportation plan and you're doubling up on a Port Mann Bridge, there has to be some thought on how we're going to move all this traffic that's coming in from the east out through our cities. And to me, I'll hug the first guy I see on the end of a shovel going to build anything in the northeast sector, because so far I haven't seen anything. And I think critical is the name of the game here. We're so far past asking. I think Port Moody and New Westminster, and we've been asking for 10 years. I think enough's enough. This is a long date.
Well, I think if your offer to embrace the workers doesn't get action, I don't know what will. Councillor Lynch.
Thank you. I guess, well, I obviously support the Murray-Clarke connector. My concern has to do with the report, and we're talking about the city recently conducted a test to assess what would happen if the connector project was not implemented in the 2031 horizon period. So we're talking 20 years from now, and that seems to be a long way to be concerned about it. And I'm not surprised that the results say that indicates that in the long term, this project, where it's not implemented, congestion would increase on parallel routes, and I suggest that's happened already. It's pretty obvious, and I'm curious as to why the 20-year horizon.
It was a coincidence that this request came in at the same time that we're actually doing our strategic transportation plan. When you're doing strategic transportation planning, it is for the long term. We go out 20 years and forecast what the impacts would be on the network, assuming variety of population and employment growth. So it was more of a coincidence that we had actually done this test just as part of our normal analysis. We test other types of external road projects in the same manner. So it was an opportunity to look at some analysis, not as robust as what TransLink will be doing in their business case analysis that they've actually already initiated.
And I appreciate that. I guess what I insinuated from the report is that there's a significant possibility that it wouldn't happen in the next 20 years, so we're going to be concerned about what the impact of that would be. So anyway, thank you.
Okay, I actually was in a meeting with Mayor Traslini and with TransLink in which the Murray-Clarke connector was discussed, and I brought to the table my own comments that it was by way of reminder. My comments were essentially that any place where we have a 4-lane road on one side and a 4-lane road on another side, and the connecting road is only 2 lanes, that would be a high priority in order to upgrade that. And I could only think of one example where it would be a higher priority still, and that would be where it was only a single lane in between there. And that, of course, exists in South Coquitlam on the North Fraser Perimeter Road, on the extension of United Boulevard, where a 4-lane road gets to a 1-lane Bailey Bridge that has alternating traffic and a traffic light. We clearly, these are high priority situations, and I fully agree with Council in Port Moody that the Murray-Clarke connector is a high priority project, as is the North Fraser Perimeter Road. They are transportation priorities that wouldn't be permitted in any other part of the Lower Mainland, I suspect. I can't imagine if Vancouver or Burnaby had a traffic bottleneck like either one of these, that it would be allowed to persist as long as both of these have been allowed to persist. And we're now getting transportation improvements. We need to put the pressure on and continue to keep the pressure on TransLink and on the regional governance structure to make sure they understand the importance of these 3 critical projects, and of course the third one, the Evergreen Line. Seeing no other speakers. The recommendations are 3. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 13, the Metro Vancouver Board in briefs. We have our representatives here available to respond to questions, but the staff recommendation is that Council receive the 2 briefs for information.
Moved by Councillor Nicholson, second by Councillor Skora. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 14 is the notice of motion concerning online municipal voting was introduced at the last meeting of Council. The notice of motion has a series of whereas clauses followed by the be it resolved clause that City Coquitlam forward a letter to the provincial government requesting the following, and there are 4 parts to that recommendation.
If you want to hold off, I believe there might be a different version of this coming forward.
Our procedure is that the mover of the motion is allowed to speak first, and the mover of the motion has indicated to myself and I believe others that there are some proposed amendments to those 4 clauses, so I will hold back from reading them at this time and activate Councillor Reamer's microphone in order that she may introduce the motion.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Reamer.
Thank you. I brought this motion forward in view of the fact that the City of Surrey and the City of Vancouver were both looking at online voting. And in view of the fact that we had a voter turnout in 2008 of 21.5%, whereas the provincial average is 35%, where voters in Ontario have been utilizing online voting for quite some time, I understand in 44 different municipalities. I understand both provincial parties, both the NDP and the BC Liberal Party, are utilizing online voting in their for their leadership votes. And whereas our citizens are very busy, they're using the internet for banking, purchases, selling, networking, and information. So I wanted to add our voice to both Vancouver and Surrey's with the UBCM and to the provincial government. And so that was my intent, was to add our voice and to try and get our voter turnout up. And when I looked at these recommendations, the original recommendations, they were really quite wordy. And what I did over this weekend is I've narrowed them down into 2 different recommendations as opposed to 4. And I'm wondering, with Council's approval, if Council would accept this as being a friendly amendment. So you've got, my colleagues have the 4 recommendations in front of them, and I've narrowed it down to 2, being, be it resolved that the City of Coquitlam forward a letter to the provincial government requesting that the provincial government look into the possibility of online voting with the intention of utilizing it for the 2014 municipal elections, and 2, that copies of this motion and letter be circulated to all municipalities in the province via UBCM, and that this be submitted for voting at our 2011 UBCM conference. So though that recommendation number 1 really encompasses all 4 recommendations, but it also creates a little bit more flexibility for the provincial government because they really do know best what has to be done to affect something like this. I just want to comment on the security of online voting. That is my major concern, and certainly with the feedback I've received to date, it's a huge concern for our citizens as well. I'm not suggesting we go ahead with this without full security in place. I do have some reassurance, however, in knowing that it has been taking place in Ontario for quite some time, that there are people out there who know how to perfect this. And so I really do think at this time that we have such low voter turnout that it's really more of a threat to our democracy than a more minor security issue might be with online voting. So I just wanted to address that issue. Thank you.
Procedurally, the motion is to amend.
Your Worship and members of Council, the reason, one of the reasons that Councillor Reamer has proffered this as a friendly amendment is our procedure bylaw actually prohibits, it's that strong, prohibits the movers of motions from proposing amendments. If it's not accepted as a friendly amendment, for whatever reason that Council may wish to consider it, not consider it friendly, it can be moved by somebody else as amended language. It is germane to the original move motion. It, as Councillor Reamer indicated, simplifies, but Councillor Reamer is unable as the mover to propose an amendment herself.
That sounds like an outdated rule.
It's an outdated rule that was, the procedure bylaw was adopted by this Council in 2009.
It still sounds like an outdated rule. And my own thoughts are that this sounds like a friendly amendment. It accomplishes what was intended. What was intended was to ask the provincial government to consider online voting. So I don't have a problem with that, and if I don't see any members. Right now, I think we've accepted it as a friendly. Any objection to that? Okay. As for the intent of it, I think the intent was to increase turnout, or actually to perhaps reduce turnout, but increase participation, to reduce the price of voting from driving down the road to this place and perhaps spending a half an hour. And it has always discouraged me that 80% of our population felt either not engaged enough or not informed enough or not interested enough to spend 30 minutes to vote. There are many people in our community that gave up everything they owned to come from some faraway country, and the only reason they did that was so they could get to a place where they could vote. And it troubles me that's one of our challenges, and so we have to do everything we can, I think, as a council, to fully engage the voter and to fully engage our community, and to make sure that they find ease in voting, so that the next generation realizes it's something that they ought to be doing as well. I think the next generation is the one that will try to vote online. It will try to vote with an iPod. I think there are lots of mechanisms that, once the security issues have been resolved, will find favor with some elements of our electorate. Other elements will continue to feel much more comfortable coming to a polling place, and those will always be available, because I know this motion doesn't anticipate the replacement of polling places with online voting, but rather the supplementing of the current processes with an electronic version. I know there's lots of things that are still to be worked out, and one of the reasons, I think, for this amendment coming forward and why I would support the friendly amendment is because the provincial government, to its credit, does try to dialogue with UBCM before it makes major changes to the governance of municipalities. And when it doesn't, we criticize it. We criticize the provincial government when it takes steps unilaterally or without consulting properly with UBCM. So I suspect if the provincial government did want to do this, it would want to bring it up at a UBCM conference, have some dialogue back and forth, and make sure that the member municipalities across the province were comfortable with the direction that was being sought. That necessarily means it wouldn't happen in time for the 2011 general election, but might be in place for 2014. I think this is an appropriate way to proceed. Councillor Asmundson.
Oh, thank you. I was thankful of the amendment here. I wasn't going to support the present amendment. My concerns and comments were regarding security of this. I've researched this notice of motion, and there's been different people. University Professor of Pennsylvania, who's the director of the U.S.-based election integrity, and how he said there's virtually no way to ensure the integrity of the count on online voting. Using an example of political parties doing online voting, that's their own private parties, their systems, how secure, that's their decision. We're dealing with the public and their voting, the count and the integrity of the vote, and that's a higher standard that we have to adhere to. I'm also concerned about that security, because when we look at recently through supposedly some of the most secure computer systems in the world were hacked by WikiLeaks. So when it comes to our democracy and our systems, we have to make sure that the integrity of our voting system is protected. I can support the motion now, and I was going to move that type of amendment, to have the provincial government look at the possibility of online voting, whether it's in 2014 or maybe longer than that. I think there's more things that need to get people involved in voting and turning out to voting. This may help, may not, but I think people have to realize in our democracy how fortunate we have to have a choice. And you look into countries that don't have that choice, and countries that don't have an integrity to their voting system, such as in Egypt, and how that has. So we have to be very careful when we talk about our electoral voting system and its integrity. So I can now support this with the amendments that Councillor Reamer has provided. It's satisfying what I was going to move as an amendment in the first place. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholson. No, sorry, Councillor Lynch. My apologies. Councillor Lynch.
Well, thank you. I recall not that long ago there was a debate happening on CBC in the morning. It had to do with online voting, and it had to do with whether it increased the turnout or not. And what they found was that it increased the turnout on those people that could not vote on the voting day, the advanced polls, but that overall the amount of people that turned out to vote was not sufficiently larger going through the online voting system, at least in those communities that they were surveying. That being said, I think we need to do everything we can to make opportunities available for people who want to vote online or perhaps can't get out to vote. And I think it's entirely appropriate, and I certainly think that this amendment is within the scope of notice. So, but I would certainly think that it's entirely appropriate that we'd ask the provincial government to look into, and they would be the ones responsible for coming up with some type of a system that would meet the security needs and satisfy what our concerns are. And I think if the cities of Vancouver and Surrey are already looking into it, that it makes entirely the most sense to coordinate with them and to send it on to UBCM and see exactly what it is that the provincial government might come back and recommend. It's too bad this wasn't put forward as one of the recommendations when they were doing the review of how many years we were going to be serving, et cetera. But I think that this in itself is not going to be what we need to encourage voter turnout. I think we obviously have a bit of a problem with engaging the voters and finding a reason for them to come out and support us. And I think that perhaps we need to look further than just this, but I think this is a good step to look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Obviously, I support the motion. I seconded it, and I see it as friends. See the amendment as friendly. I agree, and all my discussions about this, the issue of security is a major one, but we're able to securely bank. You can securely execute land registry transactions in this province. The numbers of things you can do online with great confidence in their security is considerable, and if the province takes the lead, then we're not inventing systems municipality by municipality. So I'm confident that we can find a secure way of providing online voting opportunities. And I do believe that it will increase the voter turnout, the poll. But I have to tell you, I find it fascinating. Councillor Reamer pointed out that our turnout was 21.5%. When I was thinking about this, when she'd asked me to second the motion, I did some reading online about Ontario. And not all the municipalities in Ontario use it, but in fact depends which page on the internet you look at, whether it's 22 or 33 or 44. They all seem to be double numbers though. So I picked a municipality in Ontario. I picked Guelph. I looked at their council page on the website. The first councillor alphabetically was Bob Bell, and his cell number was there, so I phoned him. And he could only speak for a minute because he was on his way into a governance committee meeting at the City Hall where they were going to talk about whether or not to adopt online voting in an attempt to improve voter turnout from the observed 33%. So even at 30, I think we've all got a long way to go. 21.5 is bad, 33 would be better, but it still wouldn't be good enough. So we have to keep trying. The other thing he told me that I found interesting was that in Guelph, their council spends $6 a vote on marketing the voting. There's an actual budget to get out the vote. And I think that's something we perhaps ought to be thinking about. Thank you.
Well, we probably have one.
What we've done in the only general election that I can speak to through my own involvement was we worked through a consortium of local municipalities. I think you may recall last time there was bus shelter ads, there was purchase of radio time, and it was done to increase the vote, not to support any one municipality. It was done sort of collectively, and the result was 21%. So there has been some efforts there, and we did spend a little bit of money and tried to leverage resources across the GBRD.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor. You know, to me, privacy is the big thing. You know, there's hackers out there. Doesn't matter what you invent. Did you see the other day on TV when the bank card has got a chip in it? And the bank says this is the most secure card in the world. Nobody can steal it. Guy walks past you while your card is in your pocket and he steals the PIN number. Just that fast, about 2 days after the thing was supposed to be so very, very secure. It's not secure anymore. So, you know, we can be talking all day about security and inventions and everything else. To me, is very, very simple. And, you know, to have a turnout that has increased because it's online voting, it may not be online voting. Maybe the people wanted a change. When I got elected in 1972, we had a mayor that's very, very, very disliked. The turnout was 60% on that year for a change. And people will turn out when they want to make a change. There'll be no two ways about it. If they don't want to change, I remember in my years as a mayor, there was an 8% turnout, 10%, 12%. 15 was about probably the highest that there was in any given year. So the situation is this, that's very, very simple. When I go to vote, yes, I go vote provincially, federally, and municipally. I want to be able to go there, mark my ballot, know that I'm the only one knows who I voted for, unless I want to tell other people who I voted for. But people love privacy when and the fact is that somehow we're going to give them so easy to where, and how many people have computers that don't have computers in their homes? Not 100% of them do, far from it. So, I know what Council Reimer is saying, and there's all the privacy in the world, but there isn't. And I certainly don't want to let the world know who I vote for or who I don't vote for. I remember years ago in the city of Coquitlam, I went to vote. I guess those are the days where they had your name and they had the number of your ballot. And they gave you with that number and all to vote. And then when I was going to hand it in, they were going to just drop it in the ballot box with a number and all so they can match and see who I voted for. I said, no, you give me that stub. I need that stub. And they're kind of resentful to ask for that stub. Right away they know who I voted for. Privacy is the greatest thing, and the voting is for the people that feel that they must vote. They must vote, they want to vote. That's their right. I know a lot of people in this city that haven't voted for 25 years, 30 years. They've just not voted in any election. You can never get them to vote, and that's the way it is. But I think we're a little premature with this, because unless it's totally secured, some way, somehow, then you can't support it, and I won't.
Okay, I just want to make one clarifying. Councillor Zakor mentioned that the PIN number would be secured or could be garnered from a credit card. It can't actually. The PIN number isn't stored on a credit card, but the credit card number, the PIN, the personal identification number, is theoretically only stored in the person's head, in the memory. But the credit card number can be secured off of those things through some forms of, they can be stolen. So that has been a challenge that they've identified with that particular system. So we do leave it to experts to come up with a better system, but a better system would be better than one that doesn't allow people to vote at all. So, Councillor Reid.
Well, listening to all this going on, I'll support the motion as it's written now. I wasn't going to. But security, how do you prevent kids who are like 12, 13, well, my grandson, who's 5, I mean, he can use the computer better than I can. So, how do you prevent this? How do you prevent a whole family from voting in a house? I don't know how they're going to do that. And new voters, there'd have to be some pre-registration. So it's quite a mystery to me how the security is going to work, because being that a kitty cat joined one member of the Liberal Party's campaign, I have quite a few animals, and I could certainly get quite a few votes out of my house in the animal shelter. So, I think there's got to be some way, and I think sending a lot of nasty words out about you, Your Worship, like they did in 1972, that could bring 60% of the population out.
Well, give it your best shot.
I don't think we want to do that either. So I don't know. One of the things we did do in the last by-election, though, that I thought was really a good idea was there were some pressing issues in our city that we sort of put out and asked people their opinion on. And perhaps this fall there could be a few more things that we could do that way. And I think that did get a few more voters out.
You don't think it was just the person that was running and as a successful candidate?
Well, of course I do. Of course I do. I mean,
Councillor Nicholson.
His handsome face and his charm and all that other stuff. But I think the referendum questions help too.
Well, I know that there are some systems that permit, for example, a mail-in ballot. And obviously a mail-in ballot has the same challenges that you'd identified about how many people could vote or who's the right person voting. And yet they seem to have overcome it with a mail-in ballot, particularly for absentee voters. So it just seems to me that this is something that could be overcome. I see Councillor. Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you. Just to respond to Councillor Reid's observation, Clerk's office staff will be coming forward with a report soon about getting the proposal to put questions on the ballot this fall and what the parameters of that would be in order to, as you recall, we had to hand count them last time, and these would be included on the electronic ballot, and we're working on that as we speak. So.
There we go. I think everyone's spoken. So the question is the motion as friendly amended. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Secor is opposed. The motion carries.
Sorry, just 1 sec for technology. We have one on-table item this evening. This is item 15. It concerns the 2010 fall active grant applications. The recommendations that Council receive the report from the General Manager of Parks, Recreation and Culture entitled 2010 Fall Active Grant Receipts for Information, and that those who have been awarded grants be awarded those grants.
Moved by Councillor McDonnell, second by Councillor Lynch. These are the grants that are intended to try to get young people involved in all kinds of activities. Any questions or debate over that? Seeing none. All in favor? Opposed? That carries unanimously. And congratulations to those groups. We thank them for their service to our community. Mr. Clark.
That is the last item on the agenda.
Motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor. Push the button. Sorry, you got to push the button. Okay. Councillor Secor.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd like to talk about the Festival du Bois. We changed King Edward quite a bit, and the fact is that now Jean Dumas is saying that she has to spend an extra $12,000 to get the trucks in and out of there because there's no letdown for the trucks to go in, and everybody's going to put up the tents and make it very inconvenient. So I guess we didn't really think that there was going to be trucks going to Mackett Park, and the problem is that she has to pay an extra $12,000. I wonder if our engineering department can work with her because it's very, very, very close to the Festival du Bois coming aboard. And I wonder what we can do for her to help her out. So the $12,000 doesn't hit her, because as we cut her down by $30,000, she's got cut down by provincial government. She's cut down by everybody. So she's in a little awkward position to put on that festival. I wonder if there's any way we can work with her.
I know I actually had a conversation with the Parks Department, who are the other decision maker in this case. Mr. Suzak, do you have some knowledge of this issue?
I don't have personal knowledge of this particular issue, Your Worship, but we'd be happy to work with the GM of Parks and Ms. Dumas, at least come to grips with what the issue is and see what we can do.
Now, this is the portion of King Ed just right south of Brunette. As you know, there has never been a letdown there, but we've always allowed trucks over the curb and to back onto we essentially get onto the tennis courts. So we're going to look for a solution there, because this is a great festival. We value it tremendously, and I'm sure we'll figure out a solution.
Another item that I brought up about 9 months ago is our park dedication. I brought it up 2 months ago. Park dedication. It seems to be ignored. Now, when can I get an answer? When are these parks going to be dedicated in this city? I want an answer. I don't want to be dancing around for another 9 months. Can anybody give me an answer when I can see the light on some park dedication? It's been 9 months now.
Well, it's been
and I asked
decades.
2 months ago, and now I'm asking again.
It's been decades, but we don't have parks here, but Mr. McIntyre is going to offer something.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. And no, I'm sorry, I don't have an answer right now. I'd have to consult with Parks and Rec staff, but we will do that, and we will get the information back to Council.
Okay, when can I expect to get some answers?
Well, it's not Mr. McIntyre's department, so I don't know that he can tell you when Ms. McKay will get back to you.
I'd like to ask the city manager.
Okay. Mr. Stevlin.
I do know that it is on Ms. McKay's work program, and if you refer to the council calendar that was distributed to council some weeks ago, I believe it is on there, but is on an unspecified meeting date because she has not had the time to actually schedule it in. I do know that she's working on it, but I do not believe she has a specific projected date. I will consult with her and have her email council with the status of that project in terms of when she might anticipate it.
I'd like to know what it's going to be, another 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whenever. I mean, I don't want to be bringing it up every 3 months here in the council chambers and having the same answers. So I'm bringing it up here now, and I hope that there's action on it. And
I just want to make it clear. We do understand, though, that we've put a lot of pressures on the Parks Department. We're working on a citywide parks plan, on a northeast sector plan, on various parks improvements projects, including the massive reconstruction of Mackin Park, and we have some staffing shortages in that department. So I'm not certain we're going to get an exact date, because I don't know that council would see this as the highest priority, given all of those other things that we're being asked to do and several projects that are ongoing. So.
But if it's not a high priority...
I didn't say it wasn't a high priority. I just said it's not the highest priority.
No, when you're saying it's not...
Some of these parks have existed for 40 years, and they weren't dedicated when you were mayor. So we're going to try and get them dedicated.
Mayor, you want to get in an argument with me? Please
don't. I'm not.
Please don't.
Okay, my apologies.
Please don't, Mayor.
I apologize. I'm just trying to suggest.
Perhaps I could provide a little bit of information. I was just looking at the council calendar that we just distributed to council 2 weeks ago, and I would encourage all of council to refer to it, because it is our best effort of scheduling issues, and these are not absolute guarantees, but parks have listed it for March 28th of this year to have a report to the Recreation, Sports and Culture Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And now I got a notice of motion. The notice of motion that Metro Vancouver be requested to redesignate the Westwood Plateau Golf Course lands, which is presently designated in the draft Regional Growth Strategy RGS as general urban, and in the city of Coquitlam, the official community plan map as extensive recreational. To the RGS, because we'd like to change it, have Metro Vancouver change it to RGS Conservation and Recreation Land Use Designation. Now, we'll discuss it 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, we'll be loaded.
We'll discuss that 2 weeks from now. I just want clarification, though. The designation of extensive recreation doesn't exist in the RGS, does it? Mr. McIntyre.
No, that's correct, Your Worship. I think what's been referred to there is the city's official community plan designation. It's just making clear it's the lands in the RGS. Under our OCP, it has that extensive recreation designation.
On our OCP, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll discuss it 2 weeks.
Okay. Thank you.
And it's signed by myself and Councillor Barry Lynch.
Thank you. Councillor Asmussen has moved adjournment. Councillor McDonnell seconds. All in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. The meeting is adjourned. Consistent with our practice, we will open the microphone to any questions on tonight's agenda, if there are any. Seeing none, thank you very much for coming. Enjoy your evening. Gung Hei Fat Choi.